Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov Chess channel and welcome back to our best chess games of all time series. So in this series we're following the best of the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history, and today I wanted to show a really brilliant game that was played in the 2015 Vikings, a tournament between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and top grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. So the game was played in the Najdorf Sicilian, and you know probably that the Najdorf can never be boring because it has so many beautiful attacking opportunities for both sides, so be prepared. This was a really beautiful game by both of them. So here Magnus opened with the move e4. We have c5 by Hikaru, knight to f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight to d4, knight to f6 and knight to c3, protecting the e4 pawn. Can lead now into many defenses. You can play the move g6 going into the Dragon Sicilian. You can play e6 having a chevening system. You can play also some different ideas. So with e5 you can also play this Lasker Pelican Sicilian stuff, and as I said, many flexible opportunities here for black. But with the move a6, Hikaru is showing his cards that he's going into the Najdorf Sicilian, and many times in the Najdorf the main strategical and tactical goal is to go with the move b5, so attacking the queen side. On the other hand, the white is trying many times a king side attack, so many times black is castling king side, white is castling queen side, and then we have this opposite side attack game where who is faster on the attack will probably win the game. So after move a6 we have now a beautiful idea here, bishop to e2. In my opinion, if you want to beat the Najdorf Sicilian, bishop to e2 or f3 are the most important ideas, because you are creating immediately this g4 attack. g4, h5, h4, g5, h5 are the main ideas, so you can do it by playing the move f3 or the move bishop to e2. In my opinion, even slightly better is this move bishop to e2, because you're developing a minor piece and you're not weakening your pawn structure with the move f3. Maybe then you could be vulnerable to some dark square attacks. So after move bishop to e2, it's obvious that we can push the pawn immediately to g4. So here b5 played by Hikaru Nakamura, pretty standard stuff of the Najdorf Sicilian. We have knight to b3, and after this couple of moves we can already see that black is left many times with these two weaknesses, the two main weaknesses of the Najdorf Sicilian, which are of course the d6 backward pawn and also the weak d5 square. But the problem about white pieces is that you don't have actually also good squares to jump here with your knight. Even if you try knight to d5, this knight will be immediately removed. So the problem is also that in many occasions these two knights on b3 and on c3 will be kicked away by some by this minority attack. What I mean about the minority attack is this 2 versus 3 situation on the queen side. So black is trying to attack a minority attack here against these two minor pieces of white. Will try to kick away this knight on b3 and will try to kick away also the knight from c3. So here Hikaru first develops his minor pieces, bishop to e7, preparing kingside castling. We have bishop to e3, so here castling, and now g4 immediately by Magnus Carlsen. So this is now really a beautiful and aggressive method against this Najdorf Sicilian. Now comes bishop to e6. Bishop to e6 is very important, because if you don't play this move, if you play maybe a slightly passive move like knight to c6, then with the move g5 you see knight to d7 is going to happen, and the problem is now that you see that you're standing in the way on in front of your own bishop, so the bishop is not going to be developed very easily. So that's why after move g4 here Hikaru Nakamura played first the move bishop to e6. Now after move g5, okay, knight to d7, but at least the bishop is now developed and can create of course some madness on the queen side. So we have now h4 by Magnus Carlsen, continuing the pressure on the king side but also supporting the pawn on g5. So knight to b6, we have queen to d2. Here Magnus is preparing queenside castling. As I said many times in the Najdorf Sicilian, we have really this opposite side castling game, where of course both of them are attacking then the castled king. So here after move queen to d2, we have now knight to d7 by Hikaru. We have f4. This is a very important move. This is a move that you should not forget when you're creating this attack, because what black is here is, I think, a solid position around the square e5. So that's why here Magnus is trying to undermine the pressure with this move f4. If you don't react, of course, then you could risk this very annoying f5 move. Then also f6 could be a liberating line. So as I said, f4 very important, because after e takes f4, bishop to f4, we're targeting now the simple weakness on d6. We have said in the beginning that many times in the Najdorf Najdorf Sicilian, the d6 as a backward pawn is now huge problem. Now it became an isolated pawn, which is of course also a long-term weakness. So after move bishop to f4, here knight to e5 was played by Hikaru Nakamura, protecting the pawn on d6, but also getting use of this very important square e5. The problem for white a little bit is that this knight from e5 cannot be kicked away anymore from the square with some pawn moves. So we don't have anymore a d pawn, we don't have anymore an e pawn, so the knight will stay there forever. From this square, the knight can be also useful around the square c4, but there is one problem about the square c4. What you don't want to do many times in chess games, you don't want to target the same square with your pieces. So you can maybe target it with 1 or 2 pieces. When you target it with 3-4 pieces, then you don't have a flexibility. I think what we would love to get is maybe some kind of a position where the knight here from b6 would stand on b4, maybe where it attacks some other squares on your opponent's side of the board. So as I said, you don't want to actually target one square. That's now, I think, a little bit of a problem here for Hikaru Nakamura. When we watch Magnus Carlsen setup, his pieces are targeting different squares. They're having a much more flexibility in the attack. So as I said, it's a beautiful setup here for Hikaru. He won the battle around the square c4, so Magnus really cannot compete anymore around the square c4. But as I said, you don't want to have so many attacking pieces around simple one square. So after move knight to e5, we have queenside castling finally by Magnus Carlsen. We have now rook to c8. Many times in the Najdorf Sicilian you will witness this move rook to c8, and when you see this rook to c8 coming, you should be always careful about some rook to c3 sacrifices. If you leave maybe the protection a little bit, you can expect probably rook to c3 happening, and then when one of these knights is coming to c4, maybe then to a3 if you take. So this rook sacrifice is really common sacrifice in Najdorf Sicilian, and it's now an obvious target here of black's attack. So you should always be careful. The main targets of blacks are here the knight on c3, also the pawn on c2. If for instance black builds a queen and rook battery on the c file, maybe also the pawn, the square a3 can be useful. Maybe if the b pawn gets deflected from the knight, then again some c file attacks are possible. The king is a little bit endangered on the c file, so that's why here Magnus first played now to move king to b1. He's getting at least out of the range, out of this potential range on the c file. He secures the king further. So we have now queen to c7, this very important battery on the c file. We have now h5. The queen has left defend the attack, of course, of the g5 square. Now h5 is a possibility here of white. So we have now one of the critical moments of the game. Here I think Hikaru could have gone knight to c4 immediately. At least he would attack here the square immediately. Knight from e to c4, or maybe knight from b to c4 is a possibility. And then if Magnus takes, bishop to c4, then knight to c4, and at least this move would force the queen to be a little bit passive. At least the queen is not on the optimal square. The queen was much better on this diagonal. Now the queen is a little bit blocked out also by this pawn. So this would be probably a better continuation here for Hikaru, where he could maybe always go into some knight to a3 ideas, deflecting this pawn again from the defense, and maybe get use of the c file. But when we think about it harder, this is now really one of the critical moments of the game, because here Hikaru played the move rook to e8. He wanted to get another piece into the defense. He tried now bishop to f8 and getting here maybe the bishop on the defensive side. But when we are playing this opposite side attack game, what I mean about that, as we said, we're attacking the king side. Here black is attacking here the queen side. You should not lose any time. You should not lose any tempi. So that's why you have to be really active. You don't want to lose any tempi. So that's why this move rook to e8 is really a little bit of a passive move. As we said, knight to c4 or knight from b to c4 would be much active. Now with the move rook to e8 here, he allowed also passive move here by Magnus Carlsen. And now after move bishop to f8, it seems to me that here Hikaru basically lost 2 extra tempi that he could have used in order to attack the position further. So always remember that when we are playing this opposite side attack game, you have to be fast on your attack, and that's exactly what Hikaru did not do here, and he lost simply too much time. Now, so after move bishop to f8, now Magnus can improve, of course, his minor pieces. Knight to d4, we have queen to c5. Here Hikaru is trying to sneak in with the queen maybe here to a5, and as we said, after move queen to a5, the main tactical shot would be something like rook takes c3, after b takes c3, then to deliver checkmate here on a2. So these are the common tactical shots of the Najdorf Sicilian. So here in the continuation, we have g6 by Magnus Carlsen, we have knight to c4 finally, we have bishop to c4, knight to c4, and now queen to d3. All of these moves would have been possible even without Hikaru playing the move rook to e8 and bishop to f8. So as I said, it seems to me that he lost simply 2 moves in the middle game stage. After move queen to d3, we have reached now the position that we have talked about, but in a different way. Here Hikaru, as we said, lost simply too much time. After move queen to d3, we have now f takes g6 by Hikaru, and now h takes g6. Here is the problem. After move f takes g6, instead of this move, you can also try here the move knight to b2, and it seemed to me in the beginning that this tactic is working, because after king to b2 we could maybe try here the move d5, and now queen to a3 is really huge problem. But there is now a beautiful move that you can play, knight to e6, of course at taking out the bishop, and after queen to a3, okay, you could try king to b1. Rook to c1 is also like a serious threat here for white, but actually with g takes f7, it's game over here for black, because whatever you do, you could maybe try king to f7 and knight to g5. You can maybe try here king to g8, but now with queen to d5 the game is over. You get this beautiful checkmate with knight to f7, king to g8, double check, and here queen to g8. It's game over. Whatever you do, it's even worse, I think. After move here, instead of this move after g takes f7, you could also try king to h8, but now we can take out the rook and also promote the queen. No good checks are possible, so it's again game over here for Hikaru Nakamura. So that's why after move queen to d3, we have g takes f takes g6, pardon me. Here we have h takes d6, and now h6 here by Hikaru Nakamura. He's trying to keep the position locked on the king side, but now with queen to g3, Magnus Carlsen is showing his cards. He's basically attacking now also the d6 weekend, and the problem is also a little bit this loose bishop on e6. Even if we trade it off, I think black is always left with this bad bishop on f8. This bishop is blocked out by its own pawn structure, so there are simply too many pawns on dark squares which are blocking out the potential activity. Again, this idea knight to b2 is not working, so everything is perfectly fine. King to b2, you see also the queen is protecting this very important third rank. So here Hikaru tried queen to b6, attacking the pawn on b2, is threatening checkmate, so that's why bishop to c1. Here by Magnus we have queen to a5. Again, I'm pointing out the main tactical threat is something like rook to c3. If the knight moves somewhere, of course, first we want to liberate the c file, then rook to c3, after b takes c3, then to deliver checkmate on a2. So that's why here Magnus tried a rook to f1, and this was now the only inaccurate move that my Stockfish engine signaled at home, because you can also play, I think, here the normal knight to e6. The rook to e6 is perfectly fine, and you see now after knight to d5 we have now reached this position, this bad bishop position, where black is simply left out with a bad bishop on f8. Okay, this bishop, knight on b3 can be kicked away in the later stage of the game, maybe with the move b3. The queen can be included into the defense, so this knight on d5 would be really the most powerful piece now on the board. So, but okay, here in the continuation, after move bishop to c1, queen to a5, here Magnus tried a rook to f1, which is also not a bad decision, because still we can target the weak f7 square. So we have now knight to e5. Now comes again this idea, knight to d5, bishop to d5, e takes d5, and now after queen to d5, here Magnus Carlsen found a beautiful way how to attack further the position. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. It's a common tactic that you will probably use many times against the Najdorf. I played really several times this tactical shot, and it's always working, because many times you will reach a similar position. That's why I really think you should be really familiar with this tactical shot, because it will probably happen to you many times, and don't hesitate, because here the beautiful move is of course to move bishop to h6, because now after g takes h6 we have now g7. If you take, of course, with the With the bishop, it's not so good because knight to f5 is going to happen, and there's not a good way anymore to defend it. But even if you include the queen, knight to h6 is going to happen, and you lose the queen for sure. So that's why after move g7, bishop to e7 was played. Now rook to h6, threatening rook to h8. So that's why here knight to f7 was played by Hikaru Nakamura, and now a new beautiful move, queen to g6, is now threatening, of course, queen to h7. So that's why you have to take queen takes h6 we have here, and now bishop to f6. And it seems so that everything is glued together here by Hikaru Nakamura, that it seems so that he can protect this position. But now with queen to h8 we have king to f7, and now g8 promotion, the rook gets deflected here, and now queen to f6 is simply winning the game. We have king to e8, and now after move rook to e1 in this position, Hikaru Nakamura resigned. So let's see what happens if he continues the game. Queen to d7 is going to happen, and now with queen to e7 it's a beautiful checkmate because the knight is of course controlling this c6 square. So really beautiful tactical shot. In the end, let's go back. This is now really a beautiful combination that Magnus Carlsen saw. Bishop to h6. If you don't react, of course, then you will lose the battle on the h file. Let's compete. Let's see again. So g takes h6, g7, bishop to e7, rook to h6, now knight to f7. Everything is forced here. Rook, queen to g6, now takes, and now this g6, g8 is really a beautiful move after rook to g8, bishop, queen to f6, and now this was a beautiful tactical shot. So really wild game, and I think you should be really familiar with this common tactics and also with this common strategy in the attack in the beginning against the Najdorf Sicilian. Use this idea many times. I think you'll have success against the Najdorf. Of course, these are top grand matches. We cannot play like Magnus Carlsen, we cannot play like Hikaru Nakamura, but you see, because of these two inaccuracies in the beginning that Hikaru played, that he lost basically 2 moves, it was obvious that he would have an unpleasant game. Although you see also Hikaru has some tactical shots on the queen side, but Magnus Carlsen defended all of them very easily and made really beautiful progress on his side, where he was better, of course, on the king side. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this, check out my commented chess games, the best chess games of all time series, and you can also check out my best chess games played by top engines like the Stockfish engine, Drag engine, and many more. Here's also the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.